Hi everyone, welcome here. It's Jessica Mahoney, and we are continuing reading Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, part 1. Okay, let's just pick up where we left off. We were at this part here, where they had this incredible, can you see, handwriting situations. I don't, yeah, anyway, so like I said, we have reached chapter 2, and we are now quite in the middle of it actually. So this is how much we have done. I'm so excited. We still have quite a lot left to do. Obviously, but let's get going. Okay, so I'm just going to start from the other page so that it's not so awkward when you start reading. Shadows under his great shadow, his most terrible servants. Long ago, it was many a year since the Nile walked abroad. Yet who knows, as the shadow grows once more, they too may walk again. But come, we will not speak of such things, even in the morning of the Shire. So it is now, the Nile has gathered to himself the 7 also, or else they are destroyed. The 3 are hidden still, but that no longer troubles him. He only needs the 1, for he made that ring himself. It is his, and he let a great part of his own former power pass into it, so that he could rule all the others. If he recovers it, then he'll command them all again. Wherever they can be, even the 3, and all that has been wrought with them will be laid bare, and he will be stronger than ever. And this is the dreadful chance, Frodo. He believed that the 1 had perished, that the elves had destroyed it, as should have been done. But he knows now that it is not perished, that it has been found. So he is seeking it, and all his thought is bent on it. It is his great hope and our great fear. Why wasn't it destroyed? Cried Frodo. And how did the enemy ever come to lose it? If he was so strong, and it was so precious to him. He clutched the ring in his hand, as if he saw already dark fingers strengthening out to seize it. It was taken from him, said Gandalf. The strength of the elves to resist him was greater long ago. And not all men were estranged from them. The men of Westernese came to their aid. This is a chapter of ancient history, which it might be good to recall, for there was a sorrow then that were not too worldly vain. For there was a sorrow. This is a chapter of ancient history. Which it might be good to recall. For there was a sorrow then too, and gathering dark, but great valour and great deeds that were not wholly vain. One day, perhaps, I will tell you all the tale, or you shall hear it, told in full by one who knows it best. But for the moment, since most of all you need to know how this thing came to you, and that will be a tale enough, this is all that I will say. It was Gellid, Evelyn King, and Elendil of Westerness who overthrew Sauron, though they themselves perished in the deed, and Isildur, Elendil's son, cut the ring from Sauron's hand and took it for his own. Sauron was vanquished, and his spirit fled and was hidden for long years until his shadow took shape again in Mirkwood. But the ring was lost. It fell into the great river Arden and vanished. London. For Isildur was marching north along the east, the banks of the river, and near the Gladen fields he was wayward of the arcs of the mountain, and almost all his folk were slain. He leaped into the waters, but the ring slipped from his finger as he swam, and then the oaks saw him and killed him with arrows. Gandalf paused, and there in the dark pools amid the Gladen fields, he said, the ring passed out of knowledge and legend, and even so much of the history is known now only to a few, and the council of the wise could discover no more. But at last I can carry on the story, I think. Long after, but still very long ago, they lived by the banks of the great river on the edge of Wildland, a clever-handed and quiet-footed little people. I guess they were of hobbit kind, akin to the fathers of the father of the stewards, for they loved the river and often swam in it or made little boats of reeds. There was among them a family of high repute, for it was large and wealthier than most, and it was ruled by a grandmother of the folk, stern and wise in old lore, such as they had. The most inquisitive and curious-minded of that family was called Sméagol. He was interested in roots and beginnings. He dived into deep pools, burrowed under trees and growing plants. He tunneled into green mounds. He tunneled into green mounds and ceased to look up at the hilltops or the leaves on the trees or the flowers opening in the air. His head and his eyes were downward. He had a friend called Deagol, a similar sort, sharper-eyed, but not so quick and strong. On a time they took a boat and went down the Gladen fields, where there were great beds of iris and flowering reeds. There Sméagol got out and went nosing about the banks, but Deagol sat in the boat and fished. Suddenly a great fish took his hook, and before he knew where he was dragged down into the water at the bottom. Then he let go of the line, for he thought he saw something shining in the riverbed, and holding his breath, he grabbed at it. Then up he came, spluttering with the weeds in his hair and a handful of mud, and swam to the bank, and behold, when he washed the mud away, there was in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring, and it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Sméagol had been watching him from behind a tree, and Deagol gloated over the ring. Sméagol came softly up behind. "Give us that, Deagol, my love," said Sméagol over his friend's shoulder. "Why?" said Deagol. "Because it's my birthday, my love, and I want it," said Sméagol. "I don't care," said Deagol. I have given you a present already, more than I could afford. I found this and I'm going to keep it. Oh, you indeed, my love, said Sméagol, and he caught Deagle by the throat and strangled him. Because the gold looked so bright and beautiful, and strangled him. Because the gold looked so bright and beautiful, then he put the ring on his finger. No one ever found out what had become of Deagle. He was murdered far from home, and his body was cunningly hidden. But Sméagol returned alone, and he found that none of his family could see him when he was wearing the ring. He was very pleased with his discovery, and he concealed it. And he used it to find out secrets, and he put his knowledge to crooked and malicious uses. He became sharp-eyed and keen-eared for all that was hurtful. The ring had given him power according to his stature. It is not to be wondered at that became very unpopular. It is not to be wondered at that he became very unpopular and was shunned when visible by all his relatives. They kicked him, and he bit their feet. He took to thieving and going out muttering to himself and gargling in his throat. So they called him Gollum and cursed him and told him to go far away, and his grandmother, desiring peace, expelled him from the family and turned him out of her hall. He wandered in loneliness, weeping a little for the hardness of the world, and he journeyed up the river till he came to a stream that flowed down the mountains, and he went that way. He caught fish in the deep pools with invisible fingers and ate them raw. One day it was very hot, and as he was bending over a pool, he felt a burning in the back of his head. A dazzling light from the water pained his wet eyes. He wondered at it, for he had almost forgotten about the sun. Then, for the last time, he looked up and shook his fist at her. But as he lowered his eyes, he saw far ahead the tops of the misty mountains out which the stream came, and he thought suddenly, it would be cool and shady under those mountains. The sun could not watch me there. The roots of those mountains must be roots indeed. There must be great secrets buried there, which have not been discovered since the beginning. So he journeyed by night up into the highlands and found a little cave out which the dark stream ran. And he wormed his way like a maggot in the heart of the hills and vanished out of all knowledge. The ring went into the shadows with him, and even the Maker, when his power had begun to grow, could learn nothing of it. "Gollum!" cried Frodo. "Gollum! Do you mean that is the very Gollum creature that Bilbo met? How loathsome!" "I think it is a sad story," said the wizard, and it might have happened to others, even to some hobbits that I have known." "I can't believe that Gollum was connected with hobbits, however distantly," said Frodo, with some heat. What an abominable notion." "It is true all the same," replied Gandalf, "about their origins. At any rate, I know more hobbits I know more than hobbits do themselves. And even Bilbo's story suggests the kingship. There was a great deal in the background with the minds and memories. It was very similar. They understood one another remarkably well. Much better than a hobbit would understand, say, a dwarf or an orc or even an elf. Think the riddles they both knew, for one thing. Yes, said Frodo, though other folks besides hobbit asks riddles, and much of the same sort, and hobbits don't cheat. Gollum meant to cheat all the time. He was just trying to put poor Bilbo off his guard, and ideously it amused his wickedness to start a game that might end in providing him with an easy victim, but the loss would not hurt him. Only true, I fear, said Gandalf, but there was something else in it, I think, which you don't see yet. Even Gollum was not wholly ruined. He had proved tougher than even one of the wise would have guessed. As a hobbit might, there was a little corner of his mind that was still his own, and light came through it, and as though a chink in the dark, light out the past, it was actually present. It was actually pleasant, I think, to hear kindly voice again, bringing up memories of wind and trees, sun and the grass, such forgotten things. But that, of course, would only make the evil part of him angrier in the end, unless it could be conquered. Unless it could be cured, Gandalf sighed. Alas, there's still little hope. Of that for him. Yet not no hope. No, not though he possessed the ring so long, almost as far back as he can remember, for it was long since he had worn it much. In the black darkness, there was seldom indeed, certainly. In the black darkness, it was seldom indeed, certainly he had never faded. He is, of course, in the torment. He is thin and tough still. But the thing was eating up his mind, of course, and the torment had become almost unbearable. All the great secrets under the mountains had turned out to be just empty night. There was nothing more to find out. There was nothing more to find out remembering. He was altogether wretched. He hated the dark, and he hated light more. He hated everything, and the ring most of all. What do you mean? Said Frodo. Surely the ring was his precious, and the only thing he cared for. But if he hated it, why didn't he get rid of it, or go away and leave it? You ought to begin to understand, Frodo. After all you have heard, said Gandalf. He hated it and loved it as he hated and loved himself. He could not get rid of it. He had no will left in the matter. A ring of power looks after itself, Frodo. It may slip off treacherously, but its keeper never abandons it. At most, he plays with the idea of handling it on someone else's care, and that only at an early stage. When it begins to grip, at most he plays with the idea of handling it on someone else's care, and that only at an early stage, when it first begins to grip. But as far as I know, Bilbo alone in history has ever gone beyond playing and really done it. He needed all my help too, and even so, he would have never just forsaken it or cast it aside. It was not Gollum, Frodo, but the ring itself that decided things. The ring left him.
What? Just in time to meet Bilbo? Said Frodo. Wouldn't an orc have suited it better?
It is no laughing matter, said Gandalf. Not for you. It was the strangest, even in the whole history of the ring, so far, Bilbo's arrival just at the time and putting his hand on it blindly in the dark. There was more than one power at work, Frodo. The ring was trying to get back to its master. It had slipped from Isildur's hand and betrayed him. Then, when a chance came, it caught poor Diego, and he was murdered. And after that, Gollum, and it had devoured him. It could make no further use of him. He was too small and mean, and as long as it stayed with him, he would never leave his deep pool again. So now, when its master was awake once more and sending out his dark thought from Mirkwood, it abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire. Behind that, there was something else at work, beyond any design of the ringmaker. I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not only by his maker, in which case you also were meant to have it. And that will be an encouragement, and that may be an encouraging thought. It is not, said Frodo, though I am not sure that I understand. But how have you learned all about this ring? About Gollum? Do you really know it all, or are you just guessing still? Gandalf looked at Frodo, and his eyes glinted. I knew much, and I have learned much, he answered, but I am not going to give an account on all things and all my doings to you. The history of Elendil and Isildur and the ring is known to all the wise. Your ring is shown to be that. Your ring is shown to be that one ring by the fire writing alone, apart from any other evidence. And when did you discover that? Asked Frodo, interrupting. Just now in this room, of course, answered the wizard sharply. But I expected to find it. I have come back from dark journeys, long searches to make that final test. It is the last proof. And all now is only to clear. Making out Gollum's part and fitting it into the gap in the history required some thought. I may have started with guesses about Gollum, but I am not guessing now. I know. I have seen him. You have seen Gollum? Exclaimed Frodo in amazement. Yes, the obvious thing to do, of course. If one could. I tried long ago, but I have managed it at last. Then what happened after Bilbo escaped from him? Do you know that? Not so clearly. What I have told you is what Gollum was willing to tell. Though. Not, of course, in the way that I have reported it. Gollum is a liar, and if you have sifted his words, for instance, he called the ring his birthday present, and he stuck to that. He He said it came from his grandmother, who had lots of beautiful things of that kind. A ridiculous story. I have no doubt that Sméagol's grandmother was a matriarch, a great person in her way, but to talk of her possessing many elven rings was absurd, and as for giving them away, it was a lie. But a lie with a grain of truth. The murder of Deagle haunted Gollum, and he had made up a defence, repeating it to his precious over and over again, as he gnawed bones in the dark, until almost believed it. It was his birthday. Deagle ought to have given the ring to him. It had obviously turned up just as to be a present. It was his birthday present, and so on and on. Okay, guys, I think we are going to call it a night. This is just for me. I must delete this because I just want to see the page that we're on. Can you see? 75.
And
Focus.
I did not delete it. I just kept it on so that we could see what our next page.
Okay, well,
reading would
start.
start.
75.
Reading would start. So.
Okay, guys, so that was very exciting. We have finished reading quite a good amount, and I hope this helps you relax. I hope this helps you relax and sleep, and I will see you in the next reading. We're on chapter 2, and yeah, good night, and I'll see you soon.
And about Gollum, do you really know it all, or are you just guessing still? Gandalf looked at Frodo, and his eyes glinted. I knew much. I have learned much, he answered, but I am not going to give an account of all things, of all my doings to you. The history of Elendil and Isildur and the One Ring is known to all the wise. Your ring is known to be that one ring, the fire writing alone, apart from any other evidence. And when did you discover that? Asked Frodo, interrupting. Just now in this room, of course, answered the wizard sharply. But I expected it. I expected to find it. I have come back from dark journeys and long search to make that final test. It is the last proof, and all is now only too clear. Making out Gollum's part and fitting it into the gap in the history required some thought. I may have started with guesses about Gollum, but I am not guessing now. I know I have seen him. You have seen Gollum? Explained Frodo in amazement. Yes, the obvious thing to do, of course. If one could, I tried long ago, but I have managed it at last. Then, what happened after Bilbo escaped from him? Do you know that? Not so clearly. What I have told you is what Gollum was willing to tell. Though not, of course, in the way I have reported it. Gollum is a liar, and you have to sift his words. For instance, he called the ring his birthday present. And he stuck to that. He said it came from his grandmother, who had lots of beautiful things of that kind. A ridiculous story. I have no doubt that Sméagol's grandmother was a matriarch, a great person in her way, but to talk of her possessing many elven rings was absurd, and for giving them away, it was a lie, but a lie with a grain of truth. The murder of Deagle haunted Gollum, and he had made up a defence, repeating it to his precious over and over again, and he moved bones in the dark until he almost believed it was his birthday. The eagle out to have given the ring to him. It obviously turned up just so as to be present. It was his birthday present, and so on and on. I endured him as long as I could, but the truth was desperately important, and in the end I had to be harsh. I put the fear of fire in him, and wrung the true story out of him, bit by bit, together with much sniffling and snarling. He thought he was misunderstood and ill-used, but when he had at least told me his history, as far as the end of the riddle game and Bilbo's escape, he would not say any more, except in dark hints. Some other fear was on him, greater than mine. He muttered that he was going to get his own back. People would see if he would stand being kicked and driven into a hole and then robbed. Gollum had friends now, good friends and very strong. They would help him. Baggins would pay for it. That was his chief thought. He hated Bilbo and cursed his name. What was more, he knew where he came from. But how did he find that out? Asked Frodo. Well, as for the name, Bilbo very foolishly told Gollum himself, and after that, it would not be difficult to discover his country. Once Gollum came out, oh yes, he came out, his longing for the ring proved stronger than his fear for the hoax, or even the light. After a year or two, he left the mountains. You see, though still bounded by desire of it, the ring was no longer devouring him. He began to revive a little. He felt old, terribly old, yet less timid, and he was mortally hungry. Light of sun and moon. He still feared and hated. And he was always ill, I think, but he was cunning. He found he could hide from daylight and moonshine and make his way swiftly and softly by dead of night with his pale, cold eyes, stronger and bolder with new food and new air. With new food and new air, he found his way into Mirkwood, as one would expect. Is that where you found him? Asked Frodo. I saw him there, answered Gandalf. But before that, he had wandered far, following Bilbo's trail. It was difficult to learn anything from him for certain, for his talk was constantly interrupted by curses and threats.
Hi, it's Jessica Mahoney. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll be doing Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I just want to pick up where we left off. Okay. Light of sun and moon, he still feared and hated, and he was always ill, I think. But he was cunning. He found he could hide from daylight and moonshine and make his way swiftly and softly by dead of night with his pale, cold eyes, and catch small frightened or unwary things. He grew stronger and bolder with new food, new air. He found his way to Mirkwood, as one would expect. Is that where you found him? Asked Frodo. I saw him there, answered Gandalf. But before that, he had wandered far, following Bilbo's trail. It was difficult to learn anything from him for certain, for his walk was constantly interrupted by curses and threats. What had it got in its pockets? What had it got in its pockets? He said. I wouldn't say, no, precious. Little cheat, not a fair question. It cheated first, it did. It broke the rules. We ought to have it squeezed. Yes, precious, and we will, precious.
That is a simple. What? That is a sample of his talk. I don't suppose you want to say any more. I had weary days of it. Oh my God, but from hints dropped among the snarls, I gathered that his padding feet had taken him at last to Yggsgaroth, and even the streets of Dale. Listening secretly and peering, well, the news of the great events went far and wide in Wildland, and many had heard Bilbo's name and knew where he came from. We had made no secret of our return journey to his home in the west. Gollum's sharp ears would soon learn what he wanted. Gollum's sharp ears would soon learn what he wanted. Then why didn't he track Bilbo further? Asked Frodo. Why didn't he come to the Shire? Ah, said Gandalf. Now we come to it. I think Gollum tried to. He set out and came back westward as far as the great river, but then he turned aside. He was not daunted by the distance, I am sure. No, something else drew him away. So my friends think that that hunted him. So my friends think those that hunted him for me. The wood elves tracked him first, an easy task for them, for his trail was still fresh then. Through Mirkwood and back again it led them. Though they never caught him, the wood was full of the rumour of him. Dreadful tales, even among beasts and birds. The woodmen said that there was some new terror abroad, a ghost that drank blood. It climbed trees to find nests. It crept in holes to find the young. It slipped through windows to find cradles. But at the western edge of Mirkwood, the trail turned away. It wandered off southward and passed out the wood elves' ken and was lost. And then I made a great mistake. Yes, Frodo, not the first, though I fear it may prove the worst. I let the matter be. I let him go, for I had much else to think of at that time. And I still trusted the lure of Saruman. Well, that was years ago. I have paid for it since with many dark and dangerous days. The trail was long cold when I took it up again. After Bilbo left here, and my search would have been in vain, but for the help I had from a friend, Aragon, the greatest traveller and huntsman of his age, of the world, together we sought for Gollum down the whole the length of Wildland, without hope and without success. But at last, when I had given up all the chase and turned to other paths, Gollum was found. My friend returned, out of great perils, bringing the miserable creature with him. What he had been doing he would not say. He only wept and called us cruel, with many a Gollum in his throat. And we pressed him, wind and cringed. and whined and cringed and rubbed his long hands, licking his fingers as if they were pained, as if they pained him, as if he remembered some old torture. But I am afraid there is no possible doubt. He had made his slow, sneaky way, step by step, mile by mile, south down at the last to the land of Mordor.
So we are still on chapter 3, though we are very much towards the end of chapter 3. And just want to say, this has been pretty exciting. Well, it's pretty good. And thank you so much for watching and for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And I'll see you soon.